And a good evening, a good Wednesday evening to you. I'm Greg Tartaglia, hosting Varsity Aces Live for tonight, June 24th, 2020. We're glad to have you along for our weekly show. This week, we're going to discuss the reopening of youth sports, which has been happening all week. Youth sports, not quite yet high school sports, but we will have the Last Dance baseball tournament coming up next month. And as we ramp up and get practices back underway, we will talk to some of the people that are running youth sports programs. Tonight it's the NJ Pride, and we have with us Rob Stern and Philip Alagia, who will help us break down kind of what's going on and what these practices and games and everything will look like now that we're getting close to being on the other side. Joining us also for Varsity Aces is my coworker, Nick Gantifus. Nick, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Greg? Hi, guys. How are you?
Great.
And we'll welcome Rob and Phil to the show. Rob, let's get right into it. You were telling us a little bit before the show about not only how things work, but how the NJ Pride softball program has gotten the ball rolling again, so to speak. They've actually been playing games before you've been practicing. Tell us about that and what's been going on.
Yeah, for the past 30 years, it's kind of worked a different way where you practice first and then get going and playing games. And obviously, we haven't had any organized practices since the winter. But opportunity came about to play in most states. As everybody's going green, you get an opportunity to play. So, our program's based on traveling. Our parents are great people. Our coaches are super, and the opportunity came about, early to play. A couple teams played in Delaware. This past weekend, we had two teams down in South Carolina, a team out in Pennsylvania. So, legally, we couldn't have practice in New Jersey until this week. But we took the opportunity to go down and play. And we knew it was going to be a little rough, but to get back out there and see the kids throwing and get some live at-bats and get the pitchers pitching, we took the advantage going out and starting the ball rolling to play.
And if you're a North Jersey softball fan, odds are very good that you've heard of the NJ Pride. But how many age levels do you have, Rob? I know it goes up to 18U?
Yeah, we have two teams at 12, two at 14. 1 at 16, 3 at 18, and Coach Phil over there coaches our 23U team. And I know he'd be mad if I didn't say and mention that. Our college kids, who, by the way, are chomping at the bit to get back out and play because obviously their season was cut totally short. So, we were gonna, my downstairs looks like a war room of schedules because you're scheduling stuff and right when you think you're going to have an opportunity to play. New Jersey came out last week saying no competition till after the 6th, so we had to shift gears and go to different places to play. So it's been crazy with, parents obviously, saying, hey, we're going here this week. No, we're not. We're going here. So we've called it a moving window, and people be flexible. And in the end, everybody, the type of people that play for us want to play. So we're going everywhere and anywhere we can to get out to play.
Well, it's good you mentioned the college kids because that does give us a little bit of a segue to. Yes, some of the teams have been able to actually play in other states so far and get going. But now that you're home in New Jersey, your home base is Ivy Hill Park, adjacent to Seton Hall campus. Phil, don't ever let me forget that. The field is in Newark, even though the Seton Hall campus is in South Orange. But that in itself is another interesting challenge based on where kind of educational institutions are with all the COVID quarantines.
Yeah,
it's not.
We're blessed that we got a great field in Essex County, and they built a beautiful facility at Ivy Hill Park. And we get an opportunity to get out there and play a lot. But the way the field is it's attached to Seton Hall, and as you know, most of the colleges around the area are shut down. So it's kind of hard to get to the facility, to practice. So we've been looking at other options and other places to play. But we're dying to get back to Seton Hall to Ivy Hill Park to practice.
Rob, you've had the fortunate situation where you've been able to play out of state, South Carolina. You mentioned Delaware. Talk to us a little bit about some of the restrictions. Was softball, or was there any kind of health guidelines in place that kind of got in the way?
In both places, I was able to watch our teams play, and there was not many changes. The umpires wore the gaiters, the cloth masks. People were making sure that we were using our own softballs, they were using their softballs, the other teams. But if you just dropped in, you wouldn't have known everything was going on. It was straight up softball, umpires behind the plate.
Really? Okay.
one of the only really restrictions was where you can put people. Everybody wanted the parents down the line, out in the outfield, and they were socially distanced and spread out. Just observing from behind. But people, the bathroom areas, I guess you could say, was a little more attended to than normal. They only had so many people going in the bathroom, and then after so many people, someone was coming in and cleaning it and sanitizing it. So, that's a plus for people that travel and play softball.
Sure.
But there really wasn't, any, you see some of the stuff in certain areas they're talking about, some funny rules and stuff to the game, but everybody's been straight up softball.
But when you start in New Jersey, we're allowed to, Governor announced that we can start playing games on July 6th from the youth level, where I have kids who play, my sons and daughters play youth baseball and softball, and then with the Pride, there are some rules, like they want you to be social distance. The league we're playing in will only allow 4 kids in the dugout, and everyone else has to be spread out behind. The umpires in New Jersey have to be behind the pitcher's mound, away from the catcher. They want coaches to wear masks. They want you to be aware of your balls and surroundings and sanitizing the ball. So in New Jersey, there will be some changes. They haven't implemented rules like the catcher 6 feet away from the batter, which some states have. I think it's going to be real softball. And when you talk to the people in the governor's office, they say, remember, our objective now, it's not about winning and losing. It's these kids having an opportunity to play. Let's get them out there. Let's have them play, and let's do it in the safest way possible. So
I know a lot of people are really anxious to get that going, but there's so many kind of technical questions of what are we going to see different. I was talking to some coaches in other sports, volleyball, for example, where we're in phase 1 technically in New Jersey, where everybody has to have their own ball. I don't think that's really possible in softball, Phil. How is it going to work when they get back onto the fields for games here in New Jersey?
What they did in South Carolina, they're going to do here. So the Pride or my team, when they play, they'll have their own balls. When the other team comes out, they'll have their own balls. And then I'm learning that every at-bat or every batter, they'll switch it, and you're going to be asked to carry hand sanitizer, sanitize, and clean the balls after every at-bat in New Jersey. The one big thing that's a big difference, it's from the youth level, from my daughter's 10 and under team, my son's team, to Pride, is everywhere go, you're being required to sign these waivers where you're holding the tournament director, the league, the umpires, the coaches, that if you get COVID or you're waiving all your rights and responsibility, which from insurance I understand, but some of the, and again, not all the parents have buy-in. We're lucky with Pride, but even there, it hasn't been 100%, right, Coach? Some people.
Listen, it's been a different year for us. We've had a couple of people that, have not wanted to travel, and we've been lenient with that and respect their decision. So it's been definitely a little different, but the paperwork has been crazy. We have our own paperwork for Pride. Every team that's playing this weekend, every facility, wants a signature. I send more waivers every day. It's just, sign. And, some even places, like we're going one of our teams in Connecticut this weekend that's only allowing, a couple of parents there, which at the lower level, that becomes the thing now. Hey, you can come and play, but you can only have one spectator per person. So that's a tough thing. When you got your little kids and you got to watch them, how do you say, hey, they can't come and they're only going? So that's going to be interesting to see this weekend up in Connecticut and listen to our younger coaches, how that plays out, the parental, side of it.
In New Jersey, you have to do temperature checks, correct?
We practiced last night, and, we had a whole log that we had at the facility that we were at, required it. Everybody came out. We had to have a pre-roster who was there, temperature checks. It went smooth. It was not, the kids were joking around after the first 5 or 6. They were doing, playing games, guess your temperature. What it was. So they were in good stride. But in the end, those are little things that we told the kids you're going to have to do to play the game you love to play. And a little something like that is not crazy. Tournaments are now also, requiring, a lot of guys are trying to schedule a lot of back-to-back games and get teams out. Or if you have a break, one of our places we're going this weekend, we're going to have a break. They were asking everybody to leave the facility, to come back. So, the smarter guys are doing it, 2 games or 3 games in a row and go home. So, there's some slight differences, but the games so far have been it's been softball. If you watch it, you're not saying, "Oh my, what is this?" It's been softball.
Phil, with working in government, talk to us about the last couple of months leading up to, Monday, June 22nd opening for practice. What was that like coming from, say the Essex County side on the government?
I mean, sports-wise, right? So the first thing was the governor allowed tennis and golf, and then they had all these rules with golf, as far as tee time 16 minutes apart, and you could only play 2 at a time. You couldn't have foursomes. So, with us, we were worried about other stuff, and the sports stuff we knew was important. Stern called me right away when the governor announced that practice was allowed, and he said, are we gonna get the fields for Essex County? And I said, we got to see what the parameters are. Are we going to issue permits? Are we going to do all that? So we were slow, as most counties were, because the governor announced you could play, and then it was about a week or 2 later before you got the guidelines, which seemed okay, and then we started to issue the permits. So it's been a strain on us because we have a limited work staff. We're spreading people out. I get complaints because, hey, listen, I'm calling permits and I have to leave a message. But even as a government, our permit office has 4 people in one office. So now we only have one person there at a time, and it becomes difficult that way. And now more and more teams are calling. So, and again, unfortunately for the government, the priority is other things other than sports. It's very important, but we're trying to get it all going.
That's been I've said that from the beginning. The hard part is everybody's excited about, hey, June 22nd, we can get out. But, listen, you can only get fields from, recreation departments, Board of Eds, and counties. So the Board of Eds are out right now because they're under lock until June 30th. So you don't see anything going on in a Board of Ed facility. A lot of towns, they may not want teams in, or they're only their own people and not a club team, to come in and practice. And there's certain areas, certain towns that have shut down totally, so we're not doing permits until January. And that's been hard. Getting the okay to practice is great. Finding the facility now to practice is a hard part. And that's what I think a lot of teams, a lot of programs, not just softball but baseball, are going to find out that, hey, it's great we can practice. Where are we going now? Where are we going to go?
I'll give you another interesting sports thing, and different from the Pride. My daughter plays on a 10 and under rec team. Travel, but not at that level yet. 10 and under. So we had a meeting with the coaches, and usually you have one set of catcher's equipment, and you rotate. You know what I'm saying? Right. So now we're like, we can't have 4 or 5 different kids catch. We got a second set of equipment. We're going to designate 2 catchers. And they're each going to get their own set of equipment, but we're not going to be able to have that 3rd or 4th kid get some innings catching. They're all going to have to get their own helmets. They can't share bats. No water coolers, nothing like that you used to have. Those are some of the things that, until the coaches got together, who's thinking about catcher's equipment, right?
Yeah, and these are all types of things that everybody's now thinking about that maybe was just sort of second nature before. But one of the things you touched on earlier was the umpires going from behind the plate to behind the pitcher. And as long as there's been baseball and as long as umpires have had to call balls and strikes, there's been arguments about what is and what isn't. And they've talked about, robotic umpires, obviously for the major leagues and things like that. But I wonder, is something like moving the ump to behind the pitcher giving him a different view of the strike zone? Would that help? Would that not? Would that be something that maybe is a way that the game evolves in the future? It's just sort of an idea I'm throwing out there, but I found that very interesting. You guys?
I hope it don't. I think some people miss it and they're 2 feet away from it. Now they're going to be 45 feet away from it. So again, I think it's something that we're going to have to roll with right now to play, and I think people will be adjusted that, hey, what's the alternative? Not playing. So I think it may not be bad, but obviously you're going to get a different strike zone because you're seeing it a different way. And in the game of balls breaking and seeing movement, that's going to be harder to see, from behind the kid because you're going to angle out a different way. Behind the pitcher, and you would set up, to a righty batter, to a lefty batter, where you're going to be. So I would think that's going to be a change. Again, in the end, like I told all my coaches, when you feel the need to get mad at an umpire, at a player, breathe. and just say back in March and April, we would have done anything to be out.
We would have taken the bad calls.
As bad as it could look, like you're playing. We're out here and we're playing, and again, I think as we keep going and the months keep passing, and we will be back to what we call normal softball. I don't see it ever evolving to that would be positioning of people, but for right now, that's it's either that or don't play.
That was more of a fan's question anyway. We sit at home for baseball and watch, the strike zone, and it's always we watch from behind the pitcher. So, I guess we'll see how the umpires do from that perspective.
We'll see which pitchers have the good personality, because they'll have the ability to talk and maybe ingratiate the umpires and get some calls as they're right there. So.
Yeah, usually you count on the catchers for that. But,
now the pitcher has to do it for himself.
I think the weird part will be for teams that are going to bounce from playing from in New Jersey to PA to Connecticut to a little further. That like if we got to play a weekend in New Jersey where the guy's behind us now, we're going to say, hey, that's where it's going to feel different. Because we say we just played the last 4 weeks with somebody, behind us. And that I think would be a change, for people. Because I know, like, again, in PA they're going to play with it behind it. Connecticut they're playing behind it. So we're right now one of the only ones that are playing behind the pitcher.
And there's some weird rules to not softball related, but some states in baseball have banned stealing because they don't want the first baseman holding on the runner. Right. So there's some really, to me that's strange. So, but like Stern said, I'd rather take modified rules any day than not play, because I know Stern was a caged animal March and April because he coaches at Mount St. Dominic, and not being able to play high school softball, I had to go check on him weekly to make sure his head didn't explode.
Yeah, and it definitely was going through an angry stage for high school, because we had a great softball team back and a great bunch of kids, and I was more depressed of not the wins and the losses, but we had 6 of the greatest days of practice that we had, and to be pulled out like everybody else. I mean, we're no different, but the relationships that you have and coaching kids, that's the fun part. I was down this weekend, like I said, watching our teams play, and I was blessed to coach Kelsey O, one of the best kids to ever throw in New Jersey, and she drove an hour to come up to say hello. Just to sit and talk to her while we were watching the game, just reminiscing and stuff, and it's. That's what it's really. In the end, the wins and losses are great, but it's the journey and the relationships you make, and that's what's being lost. The fun part about it.
Can I ask Stern a question?
Thanks everyone for joining Varsity Aces Live. We still got a few more minutes to go with Rob Stern and with Phil Alagia. Both have connections to the NJ Pride softball program. Youth sports restarting this week. We're hoping for high school sports very, very soon. And that's one other thing that we might be able to touch upon, especially, well, first of all, thank you for watching one thing, and thank you for the comments as well. We had one watcher or viewer hope that the pitchers who have to deal with the umpires being near their circle a little more calm than Coach Stern. But we'll try that up, because let's face it, Coach Stern, you're also a football guy. You're offensive coordinator at St. Joe's, I believe.
Yeah.
And we're talking about softball and baseball, which is kind of the now sport. What are we seeing or thinking or hearing for maybe football down the road in the fall?
I'm hoping good things, but the more you read stuff and listen to the colleges and all these kids testing positive, I think in the end we may see a switch to the spring. I hope we're getting out there in the fall, because I'd hate from being a coach that's coached in a season where it was totally lost. I'd hate to have any kids go through. Certain kids didn't go through it, but it's tough. It might have been the hardest thing telling your kids, hey, we're not playing. At least I think the NJSA's got a plan going on right now and a backup plan. So I'm holding the faith. I'm keeping the hope, and hoping things get better.
Coach Stern, when you've been around sports the greater of 30 years, having started at St. Joe's probably in the late 80s, early 90s, and Hudson Catholic as well. And when you really look at softball the way it is, will August be kind of the new July, as they call it? Will your season now stretch?
I don't think going forward. I think this is just the way it is right now. In backloading tournaments, I think we'll be done next year normally back in August 1st. Maybe the younger kids, but it's the kid. You got to remember, kids going off to college. A lot of colleges have camps during those times, so I think the schedule is going to be dictated by the NC2A from the high school level up. If they're recruiting in August, people are going to be playing. People don't play in August because they don't recruit in August.
Right.
So with the younger kids, you're usually done by the middle of July because remember, you're starting playing at the end of March. So you play April, May, June, half of July. You play 14, 15 weeks as a 12U, 14 and under kid. That's a long period. So
Sure.
I think it'll balance back out because of how the calendar is going to work.
We want to thank Rob Stern and Phil Alagia for joining us. Before we sign off, we'll have a couple more minutes with Nick. But gentlemen, we want to thank you for joining us, and stay well, and hopefully all the players stay well too.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Anytime.
Thank you.
And thanks for being on. One more thing we want to do before we wrap up Varsity Aces, and we'll bring Nick back in. Nick, there have kind of been two big stories this week. Number one is a restart to youth sports. Restart, I should say. The other thing, though, is we've got a lot going on with Pascack Valley and Pascack Hills and the push to change mascots. It seems like it comes around every couple years, goes away, comes back. This time seems kind of serious, and I think you're working on something for Wayne Valley, too. Wayne Valley also named the Indians, and they're having some discussions there. I guess what has struck me the most is that we've heard from the boards of ed and why they want to make the changes. I've seen a lot on social media of people who are like, wait a minute, we kind of want to keep things the way they are. What have you been hearing? And I guess, what do you think? Obviously, we're the neutral party here, but what have you been hearing on both sides?
Yeah, it's really been mixed emotions, mixed bag here. You have parties that feel that the changing of the mascot names is mandatory. They've been petitioning that for quite a few years now. But at the same time, you do have the maybe the alumni, people that have been around the programs and the school for years, going back 50, 60 years or however long it's been. And that's a similar case with Wayne Valley. Wayne Valley's been around since the early 1950s. Every couple of years, they do have these petitions do come up with the petition to change the name from the Indians. And that has now resurfaced as expected. And I remember about 15, 20 years ago, they were in a similar situation. There was a lot of pressure at the time, and obviously nothing happened. They are still the Indians today. But with what's going on now, throughout the country, you would imagine that the pressure is probably going to be greater now, and that's going to come to some kind of head in the near future. And they're going to have to make a decision. It'll probably go to a vote. But you do have sides that feel the name should stay the same. It's been that way since 1952, 1953. You're probably going to see some kind of change happen, and it's going to come to some kind of head, like I said.
Well, we do have coverage on northjersey.com, so please be sure to check in with the Varsity Aces and follow us on Twitter and Facebook as well for all the information and everything that's going on. And a shout out to Coach Jeff Jasper at Pascack Valley this week. I know Darren's off this week. He normally has a little silent shout out to the coach, but he gave him the idea this week that, if you want a mascot that's going to make everybody happy, whatever the team name is that they select for Pascack Valley, why not have the smiley face? He always wears a smiley face button in honor of the late principal there, Joe Poley. And who knows, maybe the smiley face will be the new face of Pascack Valley Athletics. Certainly it fits in with the long gold line and all the tradition of the program. But that's all the time we have for this week on Varsity Aces. Thanks again, Nick Antifas, for joining us. Thanks also Rob Stern and Philip Alagia, connected with the NJ Pride softball program. Please enjoy the rest of your week. Stay well. A lot of the regulars will be back next week, and we will talk to you again then. For the rest of the Varsity Aces, I'm Greg Tartaglia. Have a good night, everybody.